Welcome to Change the Climate, the program about the Olympia chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby and efforts to create the political will for a livable world. Now here's your host, Ari Simmons.
Hi, I'm here with Kirk Haffner, founder and owner of South Sound Solar. Hi Kirk, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing well.
Awesome, great. So, tell me what you've been up to.
Oh my.
I know you're very busy, so.
We are doing solar. I like to say changing the world one install at a time. We're business has picked up because of the incentives that were passed in the legislature
Great.
this last session. The newest incentive is no sales tax on solar installs, so that saves homeowners anywhere from 8 to 10%,
Wow.
depending on their sales tax rate. So we had a decline there in May and June, and literally people holding off to commit until after the sales tax exemption went into place July 1st. We're still volunteering and giving back to the community. We're sponsoring a Music in the Park event at Sylvester Park in mid-August. We are doing a small demonstration project at Tumwater High School and supporting a grant that they received.
The FRESH program.
The FRESH program, yes. Do you know what it stands for?
Farm raised
Better than me.
environmental sustainability. It's like a grub-like program,
It is.
but for Tumwater.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And so they got a small grant, and you know, it's not really enough to cover it, but that's what I like to do, is just pitch in and volunteer and ask for additional resources and help. Now Tumwater High School, the Tumwater School District is going to contribute a little bit more to help with that.
Excellent.
We, another big project is we got word that we will probably be doing a very large solar array on the Centralia Hospital.
Wow.
Yeah, so we've already done a big install at St. Pete's on the Sunshine House. And now they received a grant to do solar on the hospital in Centralia, and we helped them get the grant, so that's exciting.
Wow. Well, thank you for all of your community advocacy.
I'm not done yet.
Oh my gosh. Okay, good.
No.
Keep going.
So yeah, that's gonna, we're just, running a small business and supporting the community and doing the best we can. Yeah.
Approximately how many kilowatts of energy do you think South Sound Solar produces a year, just in your installs?
Yeah, we do about a megawatt a year.
A megawatt a year.
Okay.
So for folks that don't know what a megawatt is, do you have a comparison as to how much energy?
1,000 kilowatt hours.
Okay.
If you put a panel count on it, between 30 and 40,000 individual solar panels.
Wow. And how much does that power?
Oh, I should be better with statistics on that.
Okay.
Well, typical house, let's say a typical house uses 20,000 kilowatt hours a year. So I could do the math, roughly that's 10 and 150 homes powered by solar a year, I think is what it would be.
That's excellent.
I want to get out my cell phone and get the
Do
calculator.
the calculator.
But you won't let me do that.
Not here. We can do
Okay.
that afterward.
Okay.
But that is an incredible
Yeah.
accomplishment. And how big is South Sound Solar?
We have, well, first of all, we've been in business 11 years. That's something I'm really proud of. We started really small,
Yeah.
and we have been holding at about the same size for 4 or 5 years now, and that is we have about 18 full-time employees. We have 5 electricians on staff, solar techs, project managers, salespeople, office managers, marketing director, things like that. And we're very much a family business. I like this statistic. I love this statistic. With 18 employees, they have 28 kids between them, and 8 of them were born on my watch.
Wow.
Yeah, so they affectionately refer to them as the solar babies.
It's your solar family.
It's solar family.
That's
yeah.
awesome. And it's probably because you are like a family that you're able to be so successful in the way that you've gained your reputation.
Mhm.
Almost everyone that I talk to about solar knows who you are. It's so great. It's really, really great. And you have such an outstanding reputation in the community, not only for your advocacy, but also for the quality of the work that you provide. You're very honest. You will do your darndest to help people make solar a reality. I even know when my grandmother came to visit from New Jersey, you gave her some great advice as to how to begin considering converting our home back in New Jersey to solar, which is a move my grandmother has been considering for a while. So you're just...
Your grandmother is very sweet.
Yes, she's amazing. But you're just a great resource and person for doing all of the work that you're doing.
Well, I really believe, I would really hope that any business owner, right, any, active member of the community has that integrity, believes strongly in doing the right thing, and gives back to the community. A lot of times we get asked for donations, and I feel bad when I have to say no, but I use a funny expression. I'm like, I have already tithed more than my 10%, as a way to say that. So, and we have a very good working relationship with the administrators and authorities in the community, with the building departments, with L&I, the electrical inspector, with the utilities, with other people in the construction trades. We come together and work together as a team in order to make people's dreams of getting their, new house, it's very energy efficient, and with solar on it, to fruition, to make it happen.
Absolutely. Maybe we can talk briefly about, how the state's moving, because most people think Washington State, they think clouds, they think rain, and I mean, what I'm learning working for Olympia Community Solar is that this state has so much solar potential that's untapped, and a lot of people don't really know about it. So maybe can you provide an overview of how the state's moving towards solar?
Yeah. Well, what happened was back in, I think the first solar bill came out in '96, but it was in 2006 that they passed the first incentive to try and encourage solar and manufacturing, and it worked. Now I believe, I don't have the exact statistics, but I think there's between 15 and 20,000 solar installs in Washington State. And it's actually very challenging to do solar in Washington State because we don't have a great solar resource. I mean, compared to the rest of the nation, our light levels are pretty low, especially in the wintertime because of a marine climate. And our electricity rates are some of the lowest in the country. So compared to other areas that have higher electricity rates and a better solar resource, it's better in Kansas or New Jersey even, or, the Southwest especially. But it still works here, and that's the important thing, and it works quite well. And I like to offer my own property as an example of that. I've got 4 solar systems on 4 buildings, and with all the employees, we net zero. We produce as much electricity in a year as we use in a year. And I think my production meter shows well over 50,000 kilowatt hours that we've produced from the solar array. Solar works from dawn till dusk. It works 365 days a year. It works in cloudy weather. That's one of the misnomers. People think you have to have sun, and no, it works off light. As long as the solar panels are evenly bathed with light, they'll produce. But the big thing that really helped Washington was the solar incentive bill that was first passed in 2006. It was renewed in 2017, but it has since expired. But it accomplished its purpose. We have manufacturing of solar panels in Washington State. We have several manufacturers of inverters in Washington State that were here before, and regardless of the incentive. We have a much higher number of installs, and the industry, I think, has reached a sustaining point, which is really important, that there's enough interest in solar, enough concerned about climate change, enough motivation for people to be more self-sufficient, more self-reliant, that we're seeing just a solar now kind of moving on its own without that state incentive, and that's pretty exciting. Now granted, the market has dropped a little bit, but it's still holding strong. And I'm looking, you know, there's a member organization called the Solar Installers of Washington. We are founding members of that organization. They meet monthly. They're the ones responsible for getting all the legislation passed for rules and procedures that make solar much easier to do. And in talking with the membership, it seems like all the companies are optimistic, right? And you know, continuing to move forward with installing solar.
Excellent. That makes me really happy and
Yeah.
excited.
Well, and it's going to benefit Olympia Community Solar as well. The two big things that we passed in the legislature this session was we shored up net metering. It was called the Solar Fairness Act. And what it does is essentially guarantee that for every kilowatt hour a home or business or community solar project produces, they will get a kilowatt hour credit. Okay, so the money's kind of taken out of the equation. And you get that credit whether you use the kilowatt hour on site or whether it gets sent back into the grid. So that is great. And they raised the cap. They raised the cap from 0.5% to 4% of a pre-measured install base. So it increased the cap 8-fold. We had seen some utilities pushing back because they had reached their cap and said, oh, we don't have to do more net metering. And now with the state law passed, we've got that shored up.
That's
And
great.
the second one that I already mentioned is the sales tax exemption. And so for any solar project 100 kilowatts or less, there's no sales tax. We don't have to charge it, collect it, customer doesn't have to pay it. And again, that's an upfront savings and upfront incentive to encourage people to do more solar.
That's so exciting.
Probably move my hands out of my face here. So.
And when you say more people, not just individuals, business, companies,
nonprofits,
yeah. all the whole community.
All walks of life.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a pretty big goal that we have to accomplish. 100% renewable electricity by 2045. And of course, the brother to solar, I guess, would be wind and hydroelectric power, which the state already uses quite a bit of. However, we know that that's not necessarily going to be the most reliable source of energy moving forward because of reduced snowpacks and other unfavorable conditions in that way.
Pressures from agriculture, pressure from fisheries,
Yep.
which are all appropriate.
Yep. And
it's a balancing act, yeah.
I think more and more people really want to have independence from their utility providers. I think a lot of people are becoming increasingly frustrated from PSC and where it sources its energy from, especially here in the Olympia community. And I definitely know that's one of the big perks about Olympia Community Solar is it's giving people to own their own energy locally, which is going to be, I think, a really core value, not only in transitioning to renewable energy, but doing it in a way that's equitable and one where people actually have ownership and feel like they have power, literal and metaphorical. So that's all really, really exciting and super happy that you're making it happen with your team. Is there any other exciting news in the solar world that we should know about, or how can someone begin the transition to considering solar?
Well, first of all, the marketplace for solar, that is interesting, to keep tabs on that. Right now, the rumor is that worldwide demand on solar panels has increased so much that supplies are getting constrained. Which, I mean, we should jump for joy, right? We're demanding more solar panels than we can manufacture. The only problem with that is just the economics. It could drive up pricing. And we are dealing with higher pricing because of the tariffs and other things as well. But right now the market's good. The panel pricing is very good. It's low.
How's the technology in consortium with that?
The technology is a very mature technology. As I describe it when I give presentations, we see incremental improvements in efficiency, but there's not some panacea that's going to come through. Solar panels now, standard ones are about 300 watts. They'll go to 310. You have some premium panels that can be a little bit higher than that, in the 360 watts per panel range. But There is two new technologies that are coming out. One is a new backsheet technology. So quickly to describe that, solar panels, you'll see they have a lot of trace lines. Well, if you move those trace lines to the back, you increase surface area for light absorption. Makes the panels more efficient. Okay.
There you go.
A second one is a new cell technology that is using basically what's learned from nature, a shape in a mineral that's kind of pyramid shaped, that it might allow for greater absorption and can be done at lower cost than standard silicon. But the real driver right now, the real thing we're keeping an eye on in the industry is storage. Okay?
I was going to ask about this.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you mentioned, solar and wind are unreliable. Luckily, the mantra kind of is the sun shines during the day and the wind blows at night. And if we can balance that, that's pretty good. But if we're really going to switch to renewables, we can't just turn on the sun or turn on the wind like you can fire up a gas-fired plant or even a coal-fired plant or open the chutes on a hydroelectric dam, right? And so the key on that is developing storage capacity. So you see a lot of movement in storage, a lot of new architectures that are being theorized or introduced or experimented with. With that, we are seeing a decline in the pricing on storage, especially with the lithium technology, which is making it more affordable. You have more of a market for storage at the residential scale, which I think has helped driving the industry. And that's because in many parts of the country, they have time of use rates. And time of use is, okay, if you're using energy during the day, when there's plenty of sun and not too many people are using it, it's cheap. But if when you go home to Phoenix and you turn on your air conditioning and the heater on the pool, and don't ask me why they turn the heater on the pool, but they do, their energy use spikes, and so they charge more during that time.
Yeah, peak usage.
Peak usage,
Yeah.
right. And so the Tesla battery, Sonnen battery, and other technologies like that, the idea is save some of that electricity that you use or that you produce during the day, and use it at night to offset the higher cost electricity from the grid. That's the idea behind self-consumption, which then requires a storage solution, in the technology. And that's really where we've seen the industry change quite a bit in the last few years.
Right, so I'm envisioning like a rechargeable battery. So as the sun's shining, whatever it's not using, it's just kind of, because solar, correct me if I'm wrong, like what you use, like it's still producing more than what you're using at any given time, right? Depending how large the array is.
It can be, yes.
Right, and then usually people just would get credit for the energy that they're putting back in the grid, right?
Right.
If you own, this would save that energy that you're putting back in the grid for evening time, right?
Right.
Okay, just
But
want to
realize,
understand
that energy that's going back into the grid, when I produce more than I can use, of the over 50,000 kilowatt hours I produced, I've sent a good almost 40,000 back on the grid.
Wow.
My neighbors are using it, and
So
they
awesome.
don't even know, which also means replacing those fossil fuel sources.
Right.
So it's all part of the equation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in essence, that's what I think community solar does as well. It just puts the energy out into the grid, so it's not actually powering the homes of, well, it could be, who knows where it goes once it's in the grid. But the idea is just owning the energy that's going into the grid, which is a really awesome concept, because if we can replace a lot of that energy, then utilities can see like, hey, oh yeah, we can actually do this. We can actually convert our systems to this, because I know that was a really core thing in this year's legislative debates about moving to 100% renewable energy was capacity and like meeting grid demand, which I kind of lolled at a little bit because it was PSE and like Avista and all these massive companies making these arguments and claims saying, oh, we can't do that in 25 years. I was like, I've been alive that long. You can figure it out.
I've got to be honest. I need to be careful.
Yeah.
I've been in the industry 11 years, right?
Right.
And PSE is a great partner
It
with
is.
the solar industry.
It is.
And and sometimes we've seen more challenges in working with PUDs, and it was PUDs who started to push back on net metering because they're, you know, they are autonomous, okay, whereas PSE has to answer to ratepayers. And so that's been an interesting dynamic about the public-private IOU ownership. And I just want to say, yeah, PSE is a great partner, but we work with 13 different utilities.
That's excellent.
Lewis County PUD is great, Grays Harbor, Centralia City Light. And if at first it's a little bit challenging, I just look at it as an educational opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we did a project for a small utility to set them up with a solar-powered radio transmitter. And it was great, you know, and after that, they're more interested in solar and what can be done in the community. And then when they exceeded their net metering cap, without hesitation, they voted in to keep going. And that was awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that the mission is all the same, like move to one, just the methodologies are so different. Everyone has a different idea of how much capacity there is, and I think if like we all really just team up and make this like a core issue to work on and work together through some of these loopholes and things like that, we can really make a substantial difference. I do know that solar is going to be a really big component of a lot of the regional goals that we're creating for the local climate mitigation plan and things like that. Realistically, how do you see solar reducing emissions in our community and working toward those goals?
Well, solar is by far our most abundant renewable energy resource. Okay, you know, it's daylight everywhere, 365 days a year. We don't have the same wind resource or other renewables that include tidal, geothermal. Hydroelectric is renewable, but as you mentioned, there's challenges with that. And so as much solar as we can do, you know, there's really no limit other than the cost and siting. You know, we're at a house right now out on Steamboat Island, and they don't really have a good solar resource because of the trees and the orientation of the house. And that's just the way it is in Western Washington. The way to get around that, right, is to support the people that live in homes or communities like that to invest in community solar. Hey, you can't do it on your house, right? Why don't you pitch in a little bit? And we've done that a lot with other nonprofits. We've done churches, private schools. We even we're working with an organization that has a first letter Y. And unfortunately for them, though, it was the same thing. We had to go back and tell them, and just, you don't have a good location. And your money would be better spent on energy conservation, energy efficiency, automated controls. I think that's a big part of it as well. But for solar, we're going to see things moving ahead with the new energy code that's coming through the state. It's going to encourage, let's say, more renewable energy on buildings. We are going to and are going to be installing solar on buildings so that they can meet the scoring on the energy code. Okay, so that incentive, that goal is promising, and if we continue to raise the bar, we will see more and more, you know, solar on new construction, on new buildings, on retrofits to buildings. And the biggest one, I think the biggest opportunity, I know I'm blowing your own horn here, so I'm sorry, but is the community solar.
Yeah,
you know, we
absolutely.
first approached different organizations, and I was heavily involved in the original community solar law that was passed in Washington State, and we quickly learned that it was flawed because of the securities rules and the way the incentive was structured, which was anyway, I won't get into it.
I'm aware of some of the background on that hot mess.
But good projects happened, and some actual community organizations benefited as a result, so that's all good. But now we've got the opportunity to have community solar stand on its own. And I would just love to see more community solar on schools, okay, on community centers, on municipal-owned buildings, on county facilities, on abandoned or undevelopable.
Undevelopable.
You try it.
Undevelopable.
Okay, you did better. What she said. Properties, and that's going to be a great way to do more solar in larger volume, okay, which cuts down on the cost, right, in terms of dollars per watt of install cost, massively increases the production capability or capacity. So, yeah,
Well,
you
we
guys
have
keep going.
so much exciting things to look forward to. And Kirk, thank you so much for all of the work that you're doing in the community and for the region, for moving us toward renewable energy. You are nothing short of inspiring, and I'm excited as working for OCS to be learning more from you about this process and about how the solar industry is developing, as well as just being a dope climate activist with you.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
And for joining us at this beautiful place.
Yes.
All right.
If you would like to know more about Citizens Climate Lobby, go to citizensclimatelobby.org or join us at the Olympia Center at the intersection of Columbia and State on the second Saturday of the month at 9:30 a.m. Thank you for joining us on Change the Climate.
Today, I'm lobbying Congress on climate change.
Just being here in general makes me really excited. So this is going to be really fun. I'm really excited to see what the outcome's going to be.
This is kind of something I've always wanted to do, but it's really nerve-wracking because it's such an important task, and I feel like I have a lot of pressure because I really care about what I'm doing.
So far, the teams have been very supportive of my first time.
It just feels exhilarating, just getting a chance to work together and it just changed some lives.
We all bring something to the table, and we all have our own talents, and when we all bring them together, we can really make a change.
I feel pretty hopeful, just ready to go back to the district and continue to meet with them and continue to show up in their office and let them know that we're going to keep coming back.
I just had a very successful lobby meeting, and it looks like we may have a co-sponsorship.
It's so great to see just the positive response we've gotten to the bill and to CCL in general.
It feels incredible. It was so unbelievable to hear that they will probably do it today.